Pag-ibig mo, lagi kang nasa puso't isip ko at inaamin ko na namimiss kita, na namimiss kita. Sa'kin ikaw pa rin ang
Vegans,
ko.
welcome back to another episode of Webes Horrors, and welcome to October. This is definitely the season for these kind of stories to be heard, and I am back on it. I am so excited for this. An additional note, if you're new here, is that I usually read from Reddit stories and I just search things up, so I actually don't know how the story is gonna turn, if it's good or if it's bad. So we're gonna be reacting through this together because I don't know what to expect. I just search up example for this episode, Japan horror Reddit stories, true versions. So I just look for the real experiences. I don't have any idea if they're actually real, but it's an exciting journey, and it's October. Who doesn't want to listen to creepy stories, you know? Oh, and an additional note, since I will be reading Japan horror stories today, I did bring this little bunny. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm trying to put it in the light, but I don't think you guys will see it. This is a little rabbit that I got from the shrine. There's actually a letter inside. I just haven't read it. And then I got some of I don't think this is talisman. They're amulets, I think. But the thing is, I don't know which one wards off evil spirit, because I got one for good education, success, prosperity, and stuff like that. I just got it from the shrine, and I can't read yet Japanese. I'm still learning Japanese, but I can't read yet. But yeah, these are the 4. They're so cute. Still had 2 more, but I don't know where I put them. So yeah. But yeah, and of course we have little pumpkins that I got from Target. They're $3. There's a lot of these, but I put them around my new apartment for decoration to get into the whole October Halloween spooky vibe, you know? Enough with all the babbling, so let's proceed with the first story. So it started mid 2022. My best friend saw a really tall black figure. We shared an interest in ghosts, so we talked to this thing and named it the figure. Keep in mind, we've talked to other ghosts before, and they were all a part of his life. Apparently, open parenthesis, according to the figure, close parenthesis, there's a lot of parentheses in this, but another open parenthesis, him and his sibling, Yurish Kaya. I don't know how to read his name. Close parenthesis, had a crazy Russian stepdad who ripped his face off or did something like that. Same with Yurushkaya and another ghost they're close with. Okay, if I ever have Russian listeners or people that know Russian, I'm sorry if I am just sabotaging this wonderful name. I really apologize. Yurushkaya is half biologically Russian and half Vietnamese. The figure, on the other hand, is half Vietnamese and half South Korean. Wow, they really know their nationalities. It's crazy. But okay, we're going with it. The figure tended to flash lights and communicate in Morse code. Although we don't speak Morse code. Parenthesis, again, me and my best friend, end of parenthesis. He flickers candles now. Parenthesis, many electrical ones. Close parenthesis. There's a lot of parentheses in here, oh my goodness. We saw a face, sort of like a sinister smile with sharp teeth like a Cheshire cat. It's the figure's face. It means protection when his dad's ghost is nearby. Okay. 4 to September, it was my best friend's birthday party. We were having fun and messing about, and we emptied a whole packet of stars. I have no idea what's a whole packet of stars. Am I getting too old for this? All of a sudden, me and her see the figure in a star shape with his perfectly circular head above it. Keep in mind, he was like this freakishly tall black shadow, but more opaque. I am honestly confused. He can shapeshift. He became one of the stars. We decided to talk to him later that night with our friend, and He didn't know us too well at that time. Fast forward to July 2023, my cousin knew the figure. The figure was getting quite comfortable around me at that point, and it was slowly getting comfortable around my cousin. We got a piece of toilet paper, parenthesis again, one single piece, parenthesis, and asked him to move it. Keep in mind, my windows were completely shut, my door was shut, and my blinds were down. We stood at a reasonable distance away, and it moved right away. We both saw it and looked at each other. We ran downstairs to tell people what we saw. This is actually sounding like a kid that actually wrote this, but okay. Same thing happened at a different friend's house. We used tinfoil. We opened the door and the tinfoil moved. He showed me that the door doesn't create enough of a draft to make the tinfoil move no matter how hard you move it. First of all, who is he? The friend? Second, why are we asking tissue papers and tinfoils to be moved? Hello? Forward to this day, I feel his presence with me a lot, especially at sleepovers with friends. I think he feels safe with me, although I felt his presence fade away, but I can feel it stronger now. It's as if he's hugging me. Well, I think so. I usually feel his touch as he likes to feel my hair or give me a poke when he's done some movements with things. Also, apparently me and him and my cousins, friends and the figure's friends were all good friends and family in past lives. It was extremely in the past. The area looked like the village of seven deadly sins. Open parenthesis again. Me and my cousin asked them to show us. We both saw the same thing. Close parenthesis. And everyone was there together. End of story. I told you guys when I actually picked the stories, I do not read them in advance because I wanted the reaction to be raw with you guys. And I don't know how does this relate to the Japan Reddit thread, because first of all, there's no Japan unless there's actually like a mythical rumor or something like that, like cultural horror story about the figure. But I'm not seeing any relation to Japanese, especially with the ghost being like half Russian, half Vietnamese, and the other one half Vietnamese and half South Korean. I guess they migrated to Japan. I don't know how this relates, honestly, but okay. I guess we're going with it. It really feels like an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old created this story because, like, the seven deadly sins, the figure, moving tinfoil, and tissue paper, and it's like all over the place. But yeah, I don't know what to say with that, but that does count as a story no matter how bad it was. But it was a very interesting one, very interesting, definitely. It adds flavor to the night. Since the first story is done, let's now blow out our candle. Ugh. I don't like this candle, I'm not gonna lie. Kind of gives off a weird. I live with my wife in a modern mansion block in an area reclaimed from the sea only in the last few decades. Wife was away visiting friends for the weekend, leaving me home alone. I was watching Netflix into the early hours, around 2 a.m. Parenthesis, nothing new for me. I'm a night owl. End of parenthesis. When I needed to pee. Our apartment is a 2 LDK, and as such, our main bedroom door is right next to the TV in the lounge. As I got up off the sofa, I noted that the bedroom door was closed. Parenthesis, I was one of those people who likes doors to be kept closed. End of parenthesis. I did my business and walked back into the lounge, ready to carry on watching my show. I froze in place because the bedroom door was now wide open and the bedroom light was on. Okay, that is a little bit creepy. I was frozen for a good 20 seconds while my brain went through all the possibilities. Then I went through the entire apartment and checked everything. The door was locked, The balcony slide doors too. And in parentheses, the author says that even though we live up high, there was no way anyone could get in that way. End of parentheses. It kept me awake until the sun came up. Never did get an explanation, but then again, nothing has happened before or since. Okay, guys, real question. What is a 2LDK? I have no idea what that is. Like, is that supposed to be two lower down? Okay, I'm just making up things. I don't know what 2LDK. Maybe it's like a rich people thing because I've never heard of it. Or maybe I'm just dumb. Who knows? I don't know. That was a very interesting one. This one gave me a little bit of the creeps, not gonna lie, because I myself don't like it when I see doors within my peripheral view near the bedroom or wherever I'm staying at, like part of my apartment in the dark. Like, I don't want to see open doors, essentially, because like it's like giving a whole opaque black void and you just don't know. You feel like there's something staring at you even though there isn't. You get? I mean, that's why I like the doors closed, essentially. It's kind of creepy. I'm not gonna lie. This kind of stories give me the creeps because I totally relate to it. Anyways, all right. That's the end of the second segment. Let's move on to the third story. Alright, guys, I see it already in the title. It's already saying on the title of the Reddit thread, a really creepy experience I had in Japan. This time we know it's in Japan. A pretty creepy experience I had back in the early 2000s in Japan. A little background on me for context. I grew up as a biracial military brat, and I spent the better part of 2 decades growing up in Japan. Wait, sorry, this is really bothering me? Okay. Having spent years growing up in Japan and in the US, I can confidently say that there is something different when it comes to the talk of paranormal or strange experiences. I imagine that many on the subreddit may be familiar with how popular spooky Asian stories have come in the last 20 years or so. So read on to hear about some of the strangest occurrences I have encountered. During my late teens to my early 20s, my social circle and I had a naive obsession with exploring places in Japan known for paranormal activities, urban legends, and investigating creepy areas. This was prior to the advent of reality television really blowing up like ghost hunting shows. In Japan, shows like this would broadcast regularly in the summer. Why is the candle so movie? It's distracting me. Parenthesis, like October is the witching season for Western cultures, the month of August is for Japan. End of parenthesis. This was her motivation for partaking for these excursions. So here's my story. As a military brat who grew up in Japan while attending school on a US military installation, I graduated in the early 2000s. Following graduation, most of my graduating class moved back to the US to pursue college or start their adult lives. Most would leave and never return to Japan. My parents is Japanese, so I had every reason to return. It was December, and I had just returned home to Japan after my fall semester at college. To my relief, a couple of my friends chose to remain in Japan after high school, so I had friends to hang out with while home on vacation. One evening, I am out joyriding with my buddies. We had nowhere important to be and just driving around aimlessly. Occasionally, we stop by popular hangout spots for young adults hoping to meet some cute Japanese girls to flirt with, as how else would a couple of young 19-year-old dudes want to spend an evening? That is hilarious. I don't know, maybe do some karaoke. But I guess flirting if you're single is, I guess, the norm. You're young. Why am I calling them young? Oh my goodness, I feel old. I'm just 21, guys. I'm just 21. My friend, which I will call Jay, had a 90s Nissan Sylvia, aka 240SX, outside of Japan for you car folks. And he was obsessed with drifting. Truth be told, he was not good at it. You really couldn't fault the guy for trying though. that evening, he suggested that we take off to Asamizo Park, near our hometown of Sagamihara, as this large public park had many parking lots prepared throughout its grounds. The lots were prime locations for him to practice whipping his car around while not causing damage or fender benders. What is a fender bender? Without hesitation, we all agreed and headed that direction. About 20 minutes later, and we were passing the main entrance to Asamizo. During the day, this is a pleasant public park that many people recreate at. Japan, in comparison to other countries, is very relatively a safe country. This park was no exception to that notion. However, it did have some unfortunate events happen there. Parenthesis, I will elaborate on this more later. End of parenthesis. After driving into the park for about 7 minutes, we reached the first parking lot. It was around 10 o'clock at night. I hopped out of the car and pulled out a fresh pack of cigarettes and lit one up. Are you old enough for this? The evening was brisk. I gazed around, letting my night vision calibrate as the lights far off in the distance twinkled. My other friends with us also lit a cigarette, and we proceeded to have a conversation about whether Jay would be able to even get his car sideways. Jay pulls out and begins to whip his car around the parking lot. As Jay's car spun counterclockwise, the wailing of his tires attempting to grip the asphalt broke silence in that evening. Even now, I can close my eyes and still remember the smell of burning rubber. Adjacent to the parking lot was a tree line that led into some thick brush and wooded area. The park was known for its green belt scattered throughout it. I remember looking over my shoulder a few times that evening because I had this feeling that we were being watched from the woods. But each time I scanned the tree lines, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. What happened next would cause me to jump so hard that I laugh even now when thinking about it. The cell phone in my right pocket starts ringing and vibrating, and I jumped with the fright. The fact that light paranoia had set in from watching the tree lines did not help with the anxiety experience from the unexpected phone call. As I was attending college in the States and only back on vacation, I no longer had a cell phone in Japan. In fact, my younger sister had lent her phone to me so that I could be reached if necessary. I pulled the phone out thinking that she or my mother was calling for something, as none of my friends even had this number. I looked down at the green backlit LCD screen and saw displayed in Japanese was a restricted number. I thought it was strange, but figured maybe my sister was calling from a public phone. In parentheses, he says, yes, those were still a thing back then, end of parentheses. I answered the phone and said, Moshi Moshi. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. And there was nothing but silence for a response. I remembered hearing a bit of static, and then finally I heard the voice of a Japanese girl. My immediate thoughts were, this must be a friend of my sister, and so I explained that I am her brother and borrowing her phone for the evening. If she needed to get a hold of my sister, she should ring the house. She apologized, and I reassured her that no harm had been done, and then promptly ended the phone call. I placed the cell phone back in my pocket and focused back to the ruckus of noise coming from Jay's car. It must have had not been 10 minutes later. The cell phone in my pocket began ringing again. And this time I was sure that it had to be my sister or my mother. Earlier that day, I left home and did not say where I was going or when I planned on returning home. It wasn't uncommon for my mother or sister to call and ask if I had eaten dinner or if she should leave food out when I would return. I pulled the phone out, and once again I have a phone call, and it was from a restricted number. I answered the phone, and this time the voice of the same Japanese girl was on the other end of the phone call. Before I could ask why she was calling for my sister, she cut me off. Now, based off the previous phone call, I thought there was a couple things funny. I know most of my sister's friends and recognized their voice over the phone. This girl, on the other hand, I did not. Additionally, my sister never mentioned anything about new friends, and her circle was tight. She wasn't very big on being a social butterfly, but perhaps I was wrong. My sister is 3 years junior to me, and so my assumption was this girl had to be around my sister's age and too young for me. I had very little interest in engaging in conversation with her. As she probed me questions, I kept my answers vague. I don't even know why I continued to entertain a conversation with her, but hanging up would just be very rude. Suddenly, she asked what I was doing in the park so late in the evening. I almost began to answer when it dawned on me. I did not mention anything about where I was at or what I was doing. I told her I never said I was at the park. She lightly giggled and tried to play it off, insisting that she thought I said I was at the park. I told her this was weird and that I had to go and hung up. Okay, that was actually weird. First of all, good thing that he's not interested in her. And giving vague answers is definitely the answer, especially when you're talking to strangers. Second of thing, it's giving stalker vibes, guys. Jay grew tired of drifting in this parking lot. He pulled up to us and from the driver's side suggested we change up the scenery. R and I hopped back in the vehicle and off we went. Now at another parking lot, we hop out and Jay continues to do his thing. This parking lot had soccer fields not too far from it, and the lamps in the parking lot painted an orange hue, which was a bit comforting. Oddly enough, the feeling of being watched returned to me. I swung around to my right and stared at the empty field on the other side of the parking lot fence. There was nothing. At this point, Jay parks his car and shuts it off. Now silence and a thin film of burnt rubber veiled the parking lot. R starts asking what was up with the phone calls. I began to explain to Jay and R what transpired. They both agreed that it was a little strange, but speculated that maybe my sister mentioned to her friends that her older brother was back in town. Jay proceeds to tease me that I should start talking to the chick, but I protest that I have no interest. Suddenly, my phone rings again. Same deal, restricted phone number and same girl. This time, she sounds a bit more aggressive. How come you left? What was wrong at the last spot? I asked what she meant. She then says you left the last parking lot you were just at. Ooh. I remember the hair standing on the back of my neck. I made it a point to be vague and never mentioned what I was doing or where I was at. Yet somehow this girl knew what I was doing and knew we had left the first parking lot. Something didn't feel right, so I hung up on her. A moment later, my phone is blowing up. I answer again, this time irritated. What do you want? There is silence, and then I hear light static. In a sort of hushed manner, I hear her voice. I'm at the field. I see you. I spin around and face the field, looking for any sign of a person. I remember my heart racing a bit as I fumble to figure out what exactly is going on. What do you mean you see me at the field? I asked. She tells me that she sees me standing with my friends wearing my gray jacket and my buddy's car. She tells me that she coming over to us and wants to hang out. The line goes dead. Okay, that's giving me goosebumps, guys. I look at both J and R and give the rundown of what she said. They both had weird looks on their faces, and I know them well enough to know when they're lying or pulling my leg. They both just look clueless. My phone rings again. Hey, I'm almost there. Will you wait for me? The girl asks. Huh? No. What is going on in here? Why do you keep on asking me questions? How do you know where I'm at? Just who are you anyway? I know all my sister friends and don't recognize your voice, I exclaimed. I never said I knew your sister, she replied in another hushed manner. At this point, I was like, what the F? I look back at the field and I don't see anything. As I'm still on the phone with her, I asked where she was at. She said that she would be there shortly. I'm sure my friend sensed the panic in my voice. Jay goes on about nobody knows we're fucking out here. How does this chick seem to have our location? Mind you, this is 2000 and social media, internet 2.0 and smartphones are not a thing yet. People just can't get your location at that. On top of that, we're a few kilometers out of the way. You just don't randomly run into people like that. The evening is getting later as it is past 11 p.m. and I have no explanation as to what is going on. My phone rings again and before I can even answer hello, she asks us if I can see her. I am spinning and jerking like a laundry machine agitator at this point. Both of my friends decided that this is too weird. R yanks the phone from my hand and proceeds to speak with her as well. Open parenthesis, he says, I should explain that we all speak Japanese. Although I am telling this story in English, all the conversations that are happening are in Japanese. End of parenthesis. R, feeling like this is a joke, decided to toy with her a bit. He starts to ask her what she is wearing. She begins explaining something to him from what I can hear from how he responds. He then asks her what color her undergarments are, but then she abruptly hangs up. Or tells me that he thinks he annoyed her enough that she may not bother calling again. We all nervously chuckle as we cannot even begin to understand what all just transpired. I think that's a bit rude to even ask what colors your undergarments, but then again, I understand the situation. So, yep. But normally, guys, don't do that, okay? My phone blows up again. Same deal, restricted call. I answer again, this time upset, but I'm cut off. Her voice is much louder now. I could hear what sounded like wind in the background. She begins saying that she is quickly approaching us, yelling to not leave her. She wants to be with us. All of a sudden, I hear Jay drop a soda can as he faced the field. What the fuck is that? I remember Jay saying in disbelief. I hang the phone up. I look at both my friends and Jay motions to jump in the car. We all jump in and he stumps on the gas as we make our escape. My phone rings again. I look and although I don't want to answer, I feel as though I need to. I take the call and I can hear her voice. It sounds slightly huskier. She casually said, "It's a shame that you all left before I could reach you." Jay is driving frantically away from the park. At the time, I had no idea where he was taking us. It was just quiet in the car as I had the phone held up to my ear. Oh well, I guess I will just need to follow and find you all at the family mart that you're going to stop at, she said as she gave us a creepy laugh. I then replied, "What the hell do you mean by the family mart that we're going to?" Before I realized it, Jay had cut the wheel hard and pulled to the side of the road and threw his four-way hazard lights and brought the car to a sudden stop. Our damn near hit the dashboard sitting in the shotgun seat. Jay turned and looked at me. I can still remember the white look on his face. He then quietly asked, "How did she know I was taking us to Family Mart?" I hung the phone up and then powered it off. We sat in silence for a moment there. This felt like a weird dream or something. I told Jay, "Let's go somewhere else." Shortly after, we drove to a 24-hour restaurant that was our hangout spot where many of our Japanese friends frequented. We just wanted somewhere brightly lit and somewhere crowded to chill out. As we walked up to the entrance, I could see some friends occupying a booth. We walked in and proceeded to join the party. After we ordered coffee, we started explaining the strange occurrence. Initially, everyone listened on with excitement, but as I explained the story, the look of excitement written on everyone's face eventually faded and it got awkwardly quiet. Another female friend of mine who sat across from me, I'll call her Achan, looked at me and asked again the whereabouts in the park of where we were at. As she asked me this, I could see her make eye contact with her boyfriend, H. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it just as he went into his explanation. He then began to explain, "You guys, you all do know what happened in Asamizo Park, right?" We all exchanged a blank glance. Continuing, there was an incident that happened in the park one evening where a girl was walking through the park in the evening. Someone approached her and dragged her into the green belt where she was raped and strangled. I heard some rumors about some bad juju associated with that area. In disbelief, I scoffed. "You're joking, right?" Without any hesitation, he looked at me and said, "Nope, but we need to go to a shrine. Her spirit may have latched on to you." And that was the end of his literal story. What the hell? Isn't there more to say about this? But first of all, why are all of his friends all smoking? Like, I get it's a preference, but at the same time, you guys, your lungs, my goodness. But yeah, this honestly, when they wrote in here, like, he pulled out a cigarette and lit it just as he went into his explanation. That sounded like an anime, I'm not gonna lie. It sounded like an anime move or something. I don't know. That was just like, that was kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I feel so bad for the victim. I hope she's rest in peace right now. I'm also curious, like, you guys remember when I said that he said that his friend Jay saw something in the field, but he didn't really mention. So I'm gonna dive through this thread real quick to see if there's anything interesting we can find. Let's see. Apparently, okay, so Bal Chihuahua, what is with that name? Asked the author what happened, like, what did the friend see? And this is what the author responded. "Several days later, we were all hanging out. Naturally, the subject came up, and I remember him conveying how he really wasn't sure. He thought that he saw a figure wearing something white approaching us. It was enough to kick in the fight or flight instinct." Wow, that's interesting. Also, something I saw, I think it was a quick update. Yep, okay. The author did make an update, so here we go. "Many folks have requested an update, and everyone deserves some conclusions to this story. So here you go. I realize now that I left the story on quite an unintentional cliffhanger. I forget to take into account that not everyone in the audience may have a similar upbringing as myself. Picking up where I left off, my friends and I definitely thought that something took interest in me. I didn't receive any further calls. I'm sure you can understand I had no desire to return to that park to test any further theories. Not even during the daylight. It was just too bizarre and unexplainable. It really frightened me down to the core. I was just an 18-year-old kid at that time. I went and visited a local shrine and explained what had occurred and that I was concerned that I may have inadvertently attracted a yurei. The Shinto priest proceeded to perform a purification on me. I also got a protective amulet to carry with me. After seeking help from the shrine, I never received a phone call. My sister never received a phone call from a restricted number. I avoided the park for the rest of my time home during that vacation. I did return to the park a few years later. It's funny because although I forgot or suppressed those memories, it came back to me when I returned. This time it was during a pleasant afternoon. And no, I never received a call. Perhaps the Yurei passed on, or perhaps it sought after another unfortunate person. Who knows? Wow, that's very interesting. Oh. Oh, and another person also asked, like, what he did at the shrine. And apparently, it's pretty customary in Japan to visit shrines to basically receive a blessing. And they call it an omamori, or amulet to protect you from evil spirits. So basically, what he said in the story, I guess. But yeah, this was actually a very long story and a very interesting one at that. I felt like a bit of an anime moment was inserted in there, and the way that they really told the story was crazy. But yeah, whoever did that to that poor girl, I hope they were arrested or karma did its thing towards him. Like, oh my goodness, I wish he even felt guilty or devastated as to what he did. Like, not only did he rape her, he also strangled her, guys. It's awful. But yes, that is the end of today's video. We are ending it with this story, guys, because I usually do 3 horror stories per episode. I look forward to our next episode. If you guys want to continue watching, I do have a couple of videos that I did in the past few months, and you guys can go ahead and watch that. I have another Japanese horror Reddit story that I uploaded before, and for my Tagalog listeners, I have like a couple, maybe 7 or 6 videos. I will link it up in here, so don't worry about that. Just click on it and then it will show you a list of videos that you guys can watch. Anyways, thank you again for listening to Hueba's horror series. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Good night, and don't let the bed bugs bite.
Baby, ngayon lang ako nakakita ng katulad mo. You got me crazy. Kahit sinong lalaki mababaliw sa'yo. Panahon hanggang ka pa, laging pumupunta. Di na maasahan, may sorpresa ka laging dala. Ang